Hello and welcome to our new F1 podcast, Outside the Podium, with me, Dom.
And me, Eden. We've just come off the back of the Paul Ricard French GP for the F1 2021. And what do you think of the race, Dom, mate?
I thought it was very exciting, man. There was a lot of action in a race that we didn't expect to have a lot of action. There were a lot of overtakes, a lot of tense moments, and good strategies.
Mate. No, honestly, before this race, all I was told was Paul Ricard, shit circuit, worst circuit in the whole calendar. And I was coming in expecting, absolutely nothing. I was expecting, Catalonia again. But we had the qualifying, and that was very strong. We didn't get a great result from McLaren, but it was interesting. Red Bull was doing very well, Mercedes was doing well all weekend, and we get into the race straight off the first lap. We've got drama already, so it was very, very exciting. I was quite happy with that.
Yeah, man, it was really, really intense the whole weekend. Since the start of qualifying, it really seemed like Mercedes and Red Bull were really pushing each other to the absolute limit. And at the end of Q3, it was just absolute blistering laps from both Hamilton and Verstappen, and of course Bottas.
Man, at 129.
At 129.9, mate.
Beauty,
tasty
beauty.
lap.
Right, should we go over these standings then for the actual race? Because these are quite surprising. So we'll start from the bottom, right? So we got 20th, Nikita Mazepin. I mean, absolutely no surprise there.
I think I'm pretty sure Yuki Tsunoda obviously started from the pit lane. I think within about a lap, or half a lap or so, Mazepin was last.
Yes, I mean, the only interesting thing that happened with Mazepin the whole race was him. I mean, him and Mick are getting a bit argy-bargy, aren't they? So I think that's going to kick off soon. But I mean, the only interesting thing that happened with those two were the what was it? I think was it Nikita Mazepin that had pushed Mick Schumacher off the track?
I believe so. Yeah, there was some teammate drama, and I mean, I've got to say, if you're going to sign her right now, you got to be thinking, why have I signed Nikita Mazepin?
Yeah, no, Drive to Survive season 4. That man is going to be
it's fucking bullshit. No, that is
going to be fuming. No, but I suppose I've read an interview or I saw a article title, and Gunther Steiner was saying like, oh no, like that teammate drama has been blown out of proportion. Which, to be fair, it probably has. You know what F1 media is like, especially after Drive to Survive. But I don't know, man. It is. It's quite tense with those two, and I don't really blame Mick Schumacher for getting annoyed at Mazepin, considering he's sort of managed to piss off half the grid already.
Yeah, he really has, man, and the fan base as well. No one's really on his side.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. But yeah, let's just say Mazepin, not the nicest bloke from the sounds of it. Obviously, 19th, Mick Schumacher. I think qualifying, he's had his best qualifying yet in F1. Getting into quarter 2, I thought that was amazing. Lovely to see, a Schumacher back up there.
It was really unfortunate that he had his incident. He couldn't.
Yeah, exactly, and actually compete in Q2, but getting that card to Q2, honestly, mate, is something else. I mean, again, in the actual race, 19th, which we expect him to see, but he's been regularly out qualifying or out pacing Mazepin.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's very good there.
Absolutely.
Then we got 18th. We got Nicholas Latifi in the Williams car. Again, this isn't unexpected in whatsoever. But I mean, with Latifi, I know he's your average, he's your average pay driver, and I know he's not super popular amongst the fans. But I thought I was quite excited for him in Imola. He got into Q2 in Imola.
That is true.
I was very excited. But it was just
he's always seems to be in George Russell's shadow, and
that's the thing.
We'll get on to George Russell later, but what a race he had.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But this bottom, these are your regular back markers, right?
Yeah.
This is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. Kimi in 17th. I mean, I know he's been there before, but it's a shame to see Kimi there.
It is, especially since the Alfa Romeo strategy. It seemed to be quite a long first stint. You thought maybe they'd get sort of an advantage because Aston Martin did the same thing. And they managed to get a pretty good result. We'll talk about that in a bit. But I thought the strategy from Alfa Romeo was going to be a bit more advantageous than it actually was.
Like a bit more aggressive. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it fell a bit flat, really. Like it was just, I think this honestly is the biggest surprise. I
This is a shocker. 16th position. We've got Charles Leclerc, Monaco man.
I love Leclerc. I really like him. I think he's an amazing driver. But I just think Ferraris, I don't know what was going on with them because their weekend was strong. They had, they were doing well, but this actual race was just a complete disaster for them. I mean, a Ferrari in 16th is crazy. And both Ferraris out of the points. I know we'll go on to Carlos Sainz in a bit, but that is just nuts, man. I mean,
yeah.
Especially
honestly,
such a good driver.
It was so disappointing to see the downfall as the race went on. And it was the thing was that Charles did an attempt to. There was a strategy. They did 2-stop before I went for it. They went for a full send in an attempt to, I don't know, even get a fastest lap or just gain some positions back, and it didn't work. They stayed very low down the field.
That was really odd, right? Because they had. This is what I saw. It was, I think, like 15 laps to go, and they did a 2 pit stop strategy with Charles, and I was like, "What are you doing?" Because I understand, like everyone's tyres were completely ruined at the end, but I feel like that really screwed him up. Like I know he probably would have been over. I don't know. I'm no strategist, but having that, come in for his second pit stop, 15 laps to go, I thought was just ridiculous, and he just never was going to make up the time, was he? Like, I don't know.
No, it was. Yeah, I feel like it's a typical Ferrari strategy. It doesn't quite work for him, but I think really Charles' problem this weekend was his confidence. From the start, I think it was, I want to say it was Q1, maybe he said, or maybe it was Q2, but he said after. And I think that was pretty much it. From that point where he couldn't improve, he had a low confidence and morale the entire weekend. The race, obviously, that sort of came into fruition. He's really, really struggled there. So he's down in 16th, which is not a great performance from him.
15th, Antonio Giovinazzi out-qualifying his teammate Kimi by 2 places. 15th, obviously not the greatest result, but he's relatively up there. Not Alfa Romeo's best weekend, was it really? But him out-qualifying Kimi is a good sign. I think if Kimi, retires this year, which I think what we were saying the other day is looking pretty likely.
I think it's even confirmed, I believe.
Yes. They're going to keep Antonio in that seat, aren't they? What I was saying to you earlier, wasn't I? I'd love to see Mick Schumacher move up to Alfa Romeo once Kimi leaves with Antonio.
Certainly a possibility.
Yes, but we'll see. Again, 15th. Very nice result from Antonio in terms of out-qualifying his teammate, but no points. Then, okay, this is quite big. Everyone was expecting Alpine to do quite well this weekend, especially their practice sessions. The pace was there.
It was.
Ocon started in 11th and now has placed 14th, which is quite surprising, really. I hadn't realised.
Not a great race from him, really. He was not able to perform as well as his teammate.
No.
We'll talk about Alonso in a bit.
But. Exactly. But, Ocon has, this season, he has been keeping up with Alonso. It's not like Alonso's just completely outpaced him every race. You know what I mean? It's just this race has been quite unfortunate.
Absolutely. Which is really a shame considering it was his home Grand Prix. You really want to get a good result.
Yeah. You do. You definitely
wasn't quite finding it today.
Yes. 13th, we've got Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki, he's obviously rookie, incredibly young. His pace is definitely there. But his qualifying, man, that was rough.
Yeah, I was actually really impressed with his race today, considering he started in the pit lane from last. That is very impressive.
You got to consider the factors, haven't you? He did literally start dead last, and now he climbed up to 13.
Yeah,
which is very good.
And he did have a very good start. In the first lap, he gained 3 positions.
So he has done very, really well. I think with Yuki, it's one of those things that he needs a few more seasons before he gets properly in his element. But because that's expected, and I think he's doing for a rookie season. He's doing really, really well, really, really well.
Yeah, he's certainly pushing as much as he can.
I quite like him really. So
he's currently 14th in the championship as well. He's got 8 points so far.
Wow. Okay. No, that's again it's rookie season as well. That's absolutely amazing. That is
exactly. That is very good.
Okay. Next, we've got 12th George Russell. This was a big climb.
A very strong performance from George. I mean, I didn't feel like they didn't focus on him very much today in terms of
they did not at all.
The cameras and such, but he had a very good result. 12th is not bad.
No, absolutely not. Especially considering he started as well, and he got screwed over sort of in qualifying by the Mick Schumacher crash.
Yeah. The
so
red flag.
And consistently performing well, consistently out qualifying Latifi and out racing Latifi, his teammate, which is always a good comparison, comparing the teammates. And I just think writing's on the wall. He's going to have that Mercedes seat next season.
I think he's certainly in a prime position for it, I have to say.
yes. Well, we'll see. But yes, I think, that very good race from George Russell. Definitely.
It certainly was.
11th, Carlos Sainz. Now, I don't know about you, mate. Obviously, in terms of pacing Charles, he's done a good job there. But I don't think Carlos had to come in for another pit stop, did he?
No, he didn't.
So in terms of how Carlos has been doing this season and in terms of Ferrari, I think this is a very disappointing result. And I don't think it's necessarily Carlos's fault. Carlos is a great driver. I really like him. I just think Ferrari, this race was in absolute shambles, mate. Absolute shambles. Like having an 11th and a 16th, and no points. It's just, you can't have that. Especially, you look at the Constructors' Championship now. Like, McLaren is got a pretty noticeable gap. So it's going to be interesting how Ferrari try and, mitigate and catch up to that. But yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, man, this was probably my most disappointing finishing result of the entire race. I was very happy for Sainz in qualifying. He was putting up serious lap times, getting P5 if he qualified. And I mean, he started off the race well. I thought he had good pace. He wasn't keeping up with the Red Bulls and the Mercs, as I wouldn't expect him to, but he was holding his position well.
Exactly, yeah.
And it was such a shame after the second sort of high or into the second half of the race, he just seriously lost pace. He was getting overtaken by Alonso, both Aston Martins. Yes. It was just really disappointing.
It was shocking. It was starting to get a bit rough, but it's not. I don't know. I feel hesitant to blame Carlos. I have a feeling that maybe that's a bit biased because I don't know.
I certainly feel like with the strategy he had, he and how Ferrari's performance was this weekend, he really sort of got the most out of the car that he could.
Yes, exactly, and especially since the fact that we've got Charles Leclerc in 60s. Like if Charles had gone up in the top 5, then I would have said, Sainz, he hasn't had his best drive today. But the fact that both Ferraris are out points is just, that suggests a wider team issue to me.
Certainly
hopefully next weekend we see a bit of a bounce back from them. Number 10, though, Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. Absolutely beautiful race from the boy. I think, qualifying, he got heavily screwed over. I think out of all of the drivers, he definitely got the short end of the stick on that one. But he didn't let him phase in. Really, really climbed. I mean, he was right at the back, wasn't he? He was next to the Haas cars. So he has climbed very high from that. And I mean, at one point, him and Seb were 5th and 6th.
They were before they made their pit stop. Quite deep into the race, they were holding 5th and 6th.
But to have point, I mean, this is Aston Martin's first year. I know they've obviously taken over from Racing Point, so it's not a completely brand new team, but it sort of is, Their first year or first year back, I guess, in Formula One. And they're doing so well. They really are like a midfield team to be reckoned with, I think. And the fact that both their drivers have scored points over the Ferraris is a really good sign. I'd be well chuffed with that result. Well chuffed.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I think they really pulled one out of the bag there. And I think Stroll, along with Tsunoda today, had a great performance in the back of the grid, really did a good, solid combat drive. I think the strategy helped out. I think going deep in the first stint, along with Vettel, obviously really helped.
I was going to say, I think it was second lap. Vettel had a beautiful overtake on Alonso. And obviously, I know Vettel's ended up behind Alonso, but that was one thing I wrote down in my notes. It's just, I think Seb's got his confidence back a little bit. I think he's liking the car a lot more than he had at Ferrari. It's just nice to see, I think.
Agreed. And I think that's why he's taken 9th place today. And that's really not too much of a surprise.
No.
Especially after how well he did in Baku. I think that really helped him gain the step up, to be honest. So a solid result for Aston Martin today.
Definitely. Number 8, right. We've got Fernando Alonso. He's okay. Yes, okay. I think this is a good result. I think the fact that Ocon has ended up out of points, in 14th isn't great for Alpine. But I think Alonso sort of made it better for them, if that makes sense. Like it's softened the blow a little bit, hasn't it?
Agreed.
I just don't think Alonso personally. I mean, I might get butchered for this, but I just don't think Alonso will. He's past his prime, isn't he? I think let's be honest, and I think he's obviously an amazing driver, very very good driver. You have to be to win the driver championship, but I don't think the Alpine is going to get him to those podium positions ever. But
no,
he has driven very well.
Yeah, I think his return was a bit of a surprise to everyone when he announced it before the season obviously started. But yeah, I think Alpine's got potential. It's not the car to win a race. It's not the car to get in that third world championship, like you say.
No.
But I thought he drove well today. I thought his pace in qualifying was really impressive, but I was sort of expecting it to drop off in the race.
Yes.
And really, I'm quite surprised that he managed to keep those points. So I think he did well. I think he's sort of getting more comfortable in the car as well, which is good. A lot of drivers, I feel like, getting more comfortable in their cars.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge switch around, wasn't there? Yeah, there's a huge switch around 2020. So, yeah, I think it is definitely. I mean, not every driver can be a Carlos Sainz where they can just jump in and, drive. But yeah, no, for sure, I think he is starting to get used to that car. And it's a pretty solid result, I would say. Number 7, our boy Pierre Gasly. Really good result. Really, really good result. Obviously, home circuit as well, so we love to see that. I think after his result in Baku, Gasly's just been on fire. He is such a good driver, and I think people are starting to notice that this season. He, as of now, obviously Yuki Tsunoda is a very good driver, and I think Yuki Tsunoda's potential is so strong. But I think there's no denying this season at least, Pierre Gasly is sort of carrying the AlphaTauri team. I want them to stick with Tsunoda because I think he's going to get there and he's going to be at that level of Pierre in a few seasons. But obviously it's his rookie season, and he's doing very well for a rookie. But Pierre's been in there for longer. He's got the experience, and he really is just getting those points for AlphaTauri. He's doing a really, really good job.
Yeah, I think Gasly. To be honest, I think the move from when they moved him down from Red Bull to Toro Rosso at the time, obviously now AlphaTauri, I think that was a really good decision. I think that's actually over time helped him to build his confidence up. There's not been as much pressure on him because he's not in the Red Bull team. So I think he's really actually made a comeback sort of career, I suppose, as he's been in the AlphaTauri. He's been a less powerful car, and he's really outperforming that car. I mean, that compared to Tsunoda, obviously, like we said, Tsunoda's inexperienced sort of thing compared to Gasly, but he's really driving the wheels off that car. He's getting there, solid points, honestly, results.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah, I think he's just going to keep getting better and better, keep getting more points. And I think maybe if he was to move to a new team, he'd really have a good time. Could potentially get podiums quite consistently, depending on the team he moves to. Really.
That's the thing, isn't it? I think the only thing that's really holding him back now is the AlphaTauri hardware, but it's the team seems to work really well with him. There's a clear, very good dynamic. He understands it. He knows the team, and I think maybe 2022 regulations, if he sticks in that AlphaTauri seat, might pay off for him. To be honest,
agreed.
We'll see. I think it's a very solid result for Pierre, and I think this has sort of been his season really so far.
Agreed, mate. Should we move on to 5th and 6th?
Yes, I'm very excited for these. As you know, mate, I'm a bit of a McLaren fanboy. I love a bit of Daniel Ricciardo.
As am I, yeah.
It's just something about it. But Daniel Ricciardo, finally, we've been waiting all season so far for him to come into his own, to get used to that McLaren and just drive the shit out of it. And I think this is the race where we're going to start seeing that, hopefully, after this. Absolutely beautiful overtakes, from the beginning on Norris. I mean, Norris wasn't happy because I think apparently Ricciardo pushed him a bit, didn't give him enough room.
Yeah,
which I can understand. But still, he capitalised. Daniel, he capitalised off that. Went on again. The overtake on Alonso was really nice. The undertake on Gasly was a really, really good move, but I sort of credit that more to, McLaren strategists rather than just Daniel. But obviously, that as a McLaren team was a really nice move. And he's just driven really well this race. And it's just nice to see him up in, near the top 5 again. So hopefully after this, we're going to start seeing a more consistent very strong Danny Rick in that McLaren car, which would be lovely.
Yeah, I think he's really funny his feet in that car now, and I'm glad to see it because I love Danny Rick, and I think he's got so much potential as a driver. And he's really been given a solid car this season. I think it's much better than the Renault he had last season.
Yeah,
he's got a solid team, solid teammate.
Yeah.
And I really think that from now we're going to see him really start to bring the fight to Lando, and I'm excited to see it.
Yes.
In the constructors, I think really this is going to give McLaren a chance to get third place.
Yes, I'm very excited. Number 5, Lando Norris. Right, this was a very good result considering the strange pitting strategy, or at least strange for the time pitting strategy, how late they were with Norris. Because it sort of screwed him up for that part of the race. But I think in the end it actually worked out for him because he had the one pit strategy. So it worked out for him, and his tyres were fresher compared to other drivers. And obviously, you got to owe it to Norris. He's an absolutely amazing driver, absolute beast in that McLaren. And he claims 5th, despite some of the weird pitting strategies. I thought that was odds that they did that. But no, I mean, great result. I'd be so happy with that if I was Norris, especially because he got pushed around a little bit this race by Gasly and by Ricciardo. But he held his own, you know.
I think he had a tricky start to the race, like you say, and the strategy was strange for him to go so much longer than Ricciardo. But I think ultimately those fresher tyres he had are the reason he finished ahead of Ricciardo. I think the team realised that he had a bit more pace because of those fresher tyres. And I think it was just a nice result for him. I mean, we're used to seeing him in that position now. That's what's crazy. I mean, last season, he wasn't bad at all, but he was certainly not getting consistent, 5th place, 6th place, 4th and stuff like that. So it's really nice to see him
this season as well. Like, it's nuts,
Yeah, he's absolutely flying, and hopefully his pace can just keep building, his confidence keep improving, and he really keep reigning in those points for McLaren. I mean, if he's got a great teammate like Ricciardo with him now, he's got the confidence. I think this is going to be really, really telling time in the season for the constructors.
I think so as well. I think so. I think McLaren, I think writing on the wall, McLaren is going to beat Ferrari this season in constructors, definitely.
I think that's definitely the best. The rest fight is going to be very, very interesting to watch. I think Ferrari have got a lot to work on if they want to.
I mean, we've still got a whole season, but yes, exactly. There's going to be a lot they have to do for if they want to, keep with that pace of the McLarens.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's going to be very exciting. And hopefully next season, who knows what could happen in terms of McLaren pushing even further up, could get top 2. Don't want to jinx it. But with these new regulations, you never know.
Yes, exactly. I think that's what every fan is excited for, and it's those new regulations and the shake-up that will cause. But yeah, anyway, moving on. Number 4, we've got Valtteri Bottas. And I think, I feel so bad for Bottas this race. I think he did sort of get screwed over a little bit, again, by pitting strategy. But I don't necessarily think... I mean, obviously, Mercedes team is to blame, but you can't... It's one of those things like benefit of hindsight, I reckon. Because they sort of had the same thing with Lewis, didn't they? Where they both could have benefited off another pit stop, but they couldn't really because Max had already gone in earlier. So, yeah, it's a difficult one, but I do feel very bad for Bottas. And I think, he tried to hold his own as best he could against Perez, but I think those tyres were just so shot by the end that there's nothing he could have done.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Very, very tough race for Bottas. The strategy was not in his side at all. And I think really his frustration was very justified. But I think it's interesting to note that he seems to be getting more frustrated now that Mercedes aren't dominating as such. It's as if he feels he's being held back from actually competing. And I mean, I can imagine that'd be very annoying for him. Because, I mean, a lot of people don't like Bottas, and I'll admit myself, I've said a lot of times I don't feel he's got the potential that he needs to be or to have to compete with that Mercedes teammate of his, obviously. But I think today he had the fastest lap for quite a lot of the race. His pace in qualifying was mostly better than Hamilton, apart from sort of Q3 when it really mattered. And I feel like he had really good pace. He just got screwed with strategy. And I mean, really, I think personally that Mercedes should have pitted Bottas at the end after Perez had overtaken him to try and get the fastest lap of the race. Because at that point, there was nothing to lose. He wasn't going to gain on Perez. His tyres were too worn. He was about 54 seconds ahead of Norris, so there was absolutely no chance of him getting caught. I think they should have just gone for the fastest lap, especially considering Hamilton didn't win the race, so they lost points there. I think that fastest lap point could have been big.
That was a very odd. I agree. I think it would have made sense for them just to pit him just to try and get that fastest lap, and he could have got it as well. I mean, Bottas his pace is nuts. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, he definitely drove the best he could. But yeah, I think, unfortunately, I don't think Bottas is going to be in that Mercedes seat for long, which is a real shame. But I just, I mean, I think the thing is, right, Mercedes have loved Bottas in that second seat because after all the shit that happened with
Nico Rosberg.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they wanted someone who would, get them points, get them fastest lap, get that second podium spot, but they're not, getting in the way of their top dog, their favourite, Lewis Hamilton. And Bottas did provide that for them. But now in this season, where they've been, Mercedes have been pushed their very limits, and they're not coming out on top at the moment. It's quite rough. They're sort of on the back foot at the moment. And I feel like sort of that strategy with Bottas isn't working so well. They need a more competitive driver in that seat. And I think that's unfortunately why we're going to see Bottas go, which would be a real shame because he is a really, really good driver. But I also do think, to be honest, in the long term, I think a move from Mercedes for Bottas would be a good move as well, because he's always had to play second fiddle to Lewis. Like, he's always just been Lewis's wingman from the beginning, ever since he's been in that seat. Whereas I think
if he was moving somewhere where he can be more sort of dominant, competitive.
Exactly. Like, where he's given a bit of a challenge, he's given more of a spotlight and treated as his own individual driver. I think that would actually be better for him in the long run than, having one of the best cars on the grid, but, not
being able to utilize it fully.
Exactly. But yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Anyway, moving on. Number 3, Sergio Perez, another great result. I'm glad that second Red Bull seat curse has sort of seemed to dissipate, but it makes sense because out of all the other drivers that were given that Red Bull seat, Sergio Perez has the most experience. And so I think it's probably not easier, but he probably would be better at coping with the pressure that comes with that, I would imagine. Especially because his career's already been he's already had a career. So if it goes wrong, in a sense, like, he's got stuff to fall back on. But no, he's been doing so well. I think after his 2020 season, we were all obviously very worried that he wasn't going to get picked up by anyone. But I'm so glad Red Bull picked him up. And I think that Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez combo is absolutely deadly. We've shown that in Baku, mate, like when Max Verstappen's tyre went, Sergio Perez was straight there. And that's sort of what Mercedes needs. A thing like that, where you've got your top driver, Max Verstappen, but if things go wrong with that driver, you've got your second driver who will be able to get podium spots, And I think
agreed, mate.
Absolutely amazing result. I think his overtake on Bottas was very good. It was pretty neck and neck, but there was nothing Bottas could do. I mean, his tyres were completely shot. I think it was after Perez overtook him, his tyres locked up or something like that. But it was just shows like that. Those tyres were completely on their last legs for the Mercedes. But no, Sergio Perez, great race, constantly consistent as well. Like, he's been consistently doing well. So
honestly, I think he's a strong second step for Red Bull. I think he's like you said, he's the backup they need for Verstappen if something goes wrong. I feel like he's definitely finding his feet in the car after Baku. He's really getting solid. I've always rated him. Also, he's pretty good, but he just didn't quite have the car he needed to show it. And now he's really there. I'm sure Christian Horner is absolutely ecstatic with him because he just keeps pushing. He keeps getting the points that Red Bull need to support Verstappen in the championship and keep them ahead of Mercedes. And I think he's probably one of the best signings we've seen this entire season so far. And he's got incredible tyre management skills. Absolutely, man. He went so far in that race. He manages to just absolutely ace it on the hard tyres in the second stint, and really couldn't fault him today. Couldn't.
No. Yeah, it's been very good, man. He's been very good. And to be honest as well, like, he what the fuck was I going to say? I've just completely forgotten. Never mind. Moving on. Okay, I've completely forgotten what I was about Sergio Perez. Christ.
That's all right, man. It doesn't matter. We'll move on to Lewis Hamilton in second place.
On to Lewis Hamilton.
He had a pretty solid race today. I think Hamilton got a little bit lucky in turn 2 when Verstappen made the mistake on lap 1. I think that sort of gifted him the lead, but there was a lot of pressure on Verstappen there.
Yes.
But generally, Hamilton, he pretty much controlled the race for most of it. He did his normal thing. He set a good pace at the start, pulled a little bit of a gap away from Verstappen.
Yes.
He complained about his tyres. I believe it was about
his tyres.
lap 6, lap 10. He was really starting to complain about them. But I mean,
One
surprisingly today, I didn't feel like when he complained about his tyres, he didn't do his normal thing of then setting purple laps. He was actually having tyre issues.
Yes, I think it was being legitimate. Yeah, but for once, like we always expect, Lewis Hamilton, he's going to complain about his tyres, but this time it actually seemed like legitimately,
Yeah.
At one point, interestingly, I obviously watched the race with my dad. My dad pointed out that, maybe what Mercedes was trying to do was bait out the 2 pit stop strategy to Red Bull by talking about how rough Lewis's tyres were, get Red Bull to do the 2 pit stop strategy and then sort of benefit off that because Lewis's tyres are actually fine. But in the end, it was very clear that that wasn't the case. Lewis's tyres were completely ruined. And that 2 pit stop strategy was just amazing from Red Bull. And
it really was.
They won the race. That was really the moment they'd won, really. I also remembered my point about Sergio Perez. Amazing team player. I mean, I think we heard him over the radio when he let Verstappen pass. We've seen in the past where drivers, they don't like that sort of thing happening. But Sergio, he just seems like a really good team player. He's the exact sort of person you want in that second Red Bull seat. Absolute perfect driver there.
He really is. He really feels his role well.
Anyway, that's Sergio. But
Hamilton, he controlled the race well. I think he was a bit unlucky in the second stint. I think, in my opinion, honestly, when Verstappen went in for his second stop, I think Mercedes should have reacted immediately. I think they had reason to be confident that Hamilton could just about pull out the win with such a big gap to Verstappen. But I think it was just the wrong call. Obviously, in hindsight, we know that. But personally, I think there was no reason not to react. And they just lost out today, unfortunately.
Yes,
but it was a great battle between the 2 drivers.
Oh, it's so good, man. And I think, for sure. I think there was a huge gap between Verstappen and Hamilton, but every lap you saw, Verstappen was just shaving off time, and it was just closer and closer. I think one of the things Lewis said post-race interview was that, they were worried about, they didn't want to go in after Verstappen because they were worried about the undercut. But again, it's all the benefit of hindsight. But for sure. I think just in terms of the race, Red Bull strategy absolutely trumps Mercedes strategy today, and that's just how it was. Which brings us on to number 1, our boy Max Verstappen. Amazing result.
Yeah, of course. He drove hard out today. I mean, he really, really made up for his mistake on lap 1. The whole race, I feel like he was on a knife edge. He was pushing so much. And there were certainly times where he did not seem calm. Like, for instance, I think it was lap 22. I believe Verstappen undercut Hamilton. And at that point, he just about had the lead over both Mercedes, who were following him very closely. And the amount of pressure on that man in that moment must have been incredible. There was a radio message where he was just, you could hear that he was not calm at all.
Oh, absolutely. And the bit was like, calm down, like, it's all right. But I just said to my dad something like that. I was like, imagine how you'd be shitting yourself if you were driving and there was 2 Mercedes basically up your arse. My, but he managed to get that 2-second gap there, didn't he, in the end, and sort of relaxed that a little bit. But Christ, they were on him, genuinely.
They really were, man. It was a matter of if he locked up into a corner, that was it. He was vulnerable. It was incredible that he just drove perfectly. And then, of course, you heard. It was absolutely mental. And of course, the final stint where he just pushed for those last, I don't even know how many laps would it have been. It was nearly 15, 20 laps in the mediums where he was just absolutely pushing every single lap. There were times when Hamilton looked like he was going to do it, he's going to maintain the gap, but Verstappen just kept pushing. And the overtake on Bottas, I thought was genius. He made him take the uncomfortable line into the chicane, and he absolutely got a mad exit. I was screaming watching him overtake him, and then Hamilton was just, it was just immense. I really don't know why Hamilton didn't become more defensive into the chicane, because he could have stopped Verstappen overtaking him so soon. But an absolutely incredible overtake.
Oh no, absolutely. I think we were all screaming. Lap 52 out of 53, and it's like we're back. Where was it? Where he was Max Verstappen first the whole race. Lewis overtakes him, and he gets right at the end. He almost overtakes Lewis, but doesn't quite.
I believe that was Barcelona.
Barcelona, that was it. And it's sort of like a return of that. But Max has got his revenge. Like it was absolutely amazing, amazing result, and it's the sort of race you want to see. We had, I think, so far I would probably say the worst race we've had this season has been Catalonia, and I was very worried from what I was hearing that Paul Ricard was going to be that, and if not worse. But after today's race, like honestly, I don't think anyone was expecting it to be as good as it was. Like,
no, they definitely weren't, man. Everyone was expecting it to be a lot more boring, and I'm glad, absolutely thrilled to be proven wrong. It was
yes, exactly. You love to see it, don't you? And I think the thing is as well, like this is obviously very Mercedes dominant track, so I think everyone going into this was like, okay, well they've. Mercedes has sort of been put on the back foot in Baku. They're going to come back really strong. And, qualifying sort of reflected that as well, especially with Bottas. The practice sessions as well. Not necessarily the qualifying, but, the practice sessions. The pace was there. But no, it's just Red Bull that have absolutely taken this one home. And I would be well pleased if I was part of the Red Bull team right now.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It was a stunning performance today. Really deserved the win. Definitely. And fun fact, that was the first time in the hybrid era, or the turbo era, sorry, that Red Bull have won 3 races in a row. So the past, 7 years, they haven't managed to do that. So,
yes, and we're going into a triple header as well. So if they and their home circuit, so we'll see if they can secure wins on back-to-back Austria. But we'll see. That's for next week. But moving on to the next segment, I'm very curious to hear about. This is the bit I've been waiting for. This is our opinions on the best/worst driver of the day, or like team of the day, because that's what I've included as well. So I'm very interested. So if you go first, mate, I'll be very interested.
You want me to go first? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So I have my pick. I also have an honourable mention.
Okay.
So I'll go through both very quickly. So my first main pick is Daniel Ricciardo. This was a tricky one because I feel like him and his teammate did so well. And I think they needed each other to do that well. I think seeing like one of them overtake a car ahead and then the other one do it was sort of motivating. They wanted to catch and they wanted to keep with them. And I think that really helped them sort of find their feet in this race. But I just think he had a great through push with his teammate. He really found his feet today. I think the confidence is building, which is great. And he looks very promising for future races.
Agreed.
And I think the only reason that he was beaten by his teammate today was because of his older tyres, because of his strategy. I think really if he had pitted after Norris or even at the same time, I think he would have had a solid fight with him. I think he could have probably beaten him. And I think that's probably the only thing that went wrong for him today. It's just the fact his teammate came ahead. And then my honourable mention is actually Lance Stroll. This is just because of his insane push from the beginning of the race. I mean, I think I've got it somewhere in my notes that by lap 15 he was into 12th, which I just thought was incredible.
Definitely, mate.
And I think his strategy really helped him. But unfortunately, I think that his second stint was just a bit. I suppose maybe it was because he went so long the first stint. There wasn't very much time in the second stint. It was just a little bit boring. I mean, he didn't do badly by any means. He overtook Sainz. That was really important for the championship. He's got that point.
Yes, exactly. But that midfield, nothing really moved towards the end.
No, it was solid.
First and second, weren't we? But for sure.
Absolutely. But those are that's my bet or my vote for driver of the day, man. Who have you picked? I'm interested to hear.
Okay, so we're on the same wavelength, mate. I think for me, I was torn between Danny Rick and Max Verstappen. And I think, obviously, undeniably, Max Verstappen drove an amazing race. But I've got to give it to my boy Danny Rick. Maybe a bit biased, but I just think we've been waiting for him to come into his own. We've been waiting for him to really get the most out of that McLaren seat. And this is the race where it feels like finally he understands, like he knows what he needs to do now. So that was just really great to see. Really, really exciting. And pretty much everything you said, I 100% agree with. I think the teamwork in the sense of pushing each other was very good. I mean, that overtaking Alonso, Daniel going, and then Lando, that was just so good. And if I was McLaren, I mean, after practice and qualifying, I'd be chuffed with a 5th and 6th. I think they did so well to bring that back. But that's definitely mine. I think I definitely agree with you on the Stroll runner-up. I think he he had an amazing result, and Aston Martin in general did as well. It's just, I mean, I genuinely, if Aston Martin had got that 5th and 6th place, which they were holding for a bit, they'd definitely be my drivers of the day. But yeah, no, I think bit of bias as well. But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo, driver of the day, absolutely. But yeah,
that's a solid bet, mate. Moving on to the next thing, I'm curious. Who did you pick as your favourite team of the day, or your best performing team of the day?
Best performing team. Okay, so I also put McLaren. This is very biased, but I also put McLaren. But to be fair, I feel like this really could go to quite a few teams, really. I mean, you've got McLaren, but I also think Red Bull were one of the best teams. I mean, everyone was expecting coming into this weekend that Mercedes were going to, fight back, that it was going to be a Mercedes dominant track. We're going to a more traditional circuit. We're away from the street circuits. And Red Bull just completely proved everyone wrong. And I think that is, they're really giving Lewis Hamilton a run for his money. I think people have been threatening him for years in F1, and it's finally happened, it feels like, which is great. It's just great to see. It is really, really great to see. And it seems like it's going to be quite a historic season, to be honest. So yeah, I think I'll go with Red Bull in the end. I did write down McLaren, but I've got to give it to Red Bull. What about you, mate?
This is very tricky for me. I'll explain. I agree certainly with Red Bull and McLaren, but I'm not fully sure which one I think was better, because I feel like both teams excelled in different ways. So I feel like McLaren overall had the better overtaking of the day in terms of how many cars they overtake, how far they pushed through the field. And I feel like they had a better comeback over the race. Red Bull didn't, but that's literally just because they were already at the front of the field. They couldn't really do much better. The only thing they could have done better was get a 1-2. But generally, they beat Bottas. That was really sort of all they needed to do for the constructors' points, the standings and such. So I feel like both teams excelled. And also it's worth mentioning that Red Bull had an amazing strategy that really won them the race, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's for me what sort of edges it over, because obviously McLaren's strategy felt a bit odd. Still did amazingly well, obviously climbed back up, but I think Red Bull's strategy was just so strong. You got to give it to that team for that, definitely.
Agreed, man. And I think that's why it's very, very close. But I think I also have to give it to Red Bull just for their sheer outperformance of Mercedes on a track that we, like you said, thought would be so Mercedes dominant. They really smashed it today.
Yes. Now, for the worst driver / worst team. Now, I don't actually have a worst driver. I think everyone drove obviously people like Nikita Mazepin, but I don't think you could, if we do a worst driver, I think it's almost always going to end up with Nikita, isn't it, really? But so I'm sort of more focusing on worst team or most disappointing, I think is probably a better word for it.
I'm going to use the term most disappointing in mind.
Most disappointing, I think, is probably a good way to put it, rather than worst is a bit too negative. But for me, Ferrari, I think Ferrari, we mentioned this when we were going through the podiums, through the positions. But yeah, I mean, the fact that Ferrari didn't get any drivers in points at all. And this is why I don't really want to label Ferrari drivers as the disappointing drivers, because I've been disappointed for them, but I don't necessarily think it's their fault. I personally feel that Ferrari's strategy was all over the place. I just think I just don't know what's going on with that team, mate. I really don't.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair, man. I'll wait to see what I say. Did I give anything away? But okay. Interestingly, I actually do have most disappointing drivers, and I'll say their names first, and then I'll sort of say why.
Yes.
So again, I have an honourable mention, but for me, these two are sort of on par. And unfortunately, it's both Ferrari drivers. Now, the reason that I feel this is a bit unfair to say is because, like you said, it's not their fault. But I think the problem is that there's just a little bit of lack of consistency in the team at the moment. If you think about Monaco, when Sainz got, was it second place in the race? And then obviously Baku, when Charles got, I believe, was it fourth or fifth?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. I think those are really solid performances, and you think that's really good. Ferrari should not been deal. But then you get races like this where it's really not what you expect. True, and it's just that lack of consistency is what I think really ruins Ferrari's chances.
Mm.
And I think that's also why I've put them as the most disappointing team. I have to agree on that. They just didn't have a great race. I don't know what it was. Maybe on another day they would have smashed it. Maybe it's just the car isn't suited to Paul Ricard. I really don't know, but I think they just had a poor race and not a lot of consistency. And it's a bit of a shambles. I don't know where they go from here. I don't know what they fix. Really.
That's the thing. What do you fix? I think regularly it seems that Ferrari has a pretty consistent problem with strategy. And I think when it comes to Paul Ricard, this is a race where, we had a change in degrees, strong winds. Like every team realised halfway through the race, okay, this isn't going to be a one pit strategy. We might have to switch to two. And that's what made it really interesting, because some teams decided to stick with one pit, some teams decided to do two pit. But Ferrari, I just don't think could cope with that change in plans. I don't know how they formulate how they do things, but I don't know. We'll never know. And obviously, this is me speaking as a complete amateur, but it just feels like, McLaren was like, okay, we're switching to plan B. Okay, we're switching to plan B. And the drivers know what they're talking about. The team knows what they're talking about. Everything's organised already mid-race. Ferrari, we didn't hear any team radios from Ferrari, which maybe, doesn't help, but they just didn't feel like there was a plan or there was a preparation to change plans. It feels like we've got this one rigid plan, and if this doesn't work out, oh shit, what do we do? That's the sort of vibe I'm getting from them. And I know people constantly complain about Ferrari's team principal. I really do think he should be their technical director. He's got so much engineering from what I've learned about him. He's got so much engineering experience and all that, and he's a very technical man. But they need someone else in that team principal role, I think, to sort out strategy and lead that team, because they've been struggling for a few seasons now, haven't they, mate?
Yeah, they have. I think, to be honest, their last decent season was probably 2018. I think in 2019, they did well. They got a win in Singapore, and Leclerc got they 2 wins in a row in Monza and Spa, which was very solid. But I think in terms of competing for the championship, 2018 was certainly, at least the start of the 2018 season was their best shot recently. So they definitely need some things to change. I agree with the leadership. Binotto, he's a bit hit and miss, I suppose, which is probably where the consistency comes from.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's a lot to work on, I think, and I don't know if it's going to be solved by the end of the season. But they've got a great driver lineup. It really doesn't make sense why it's not translating. It certainly isn't to do with the drivers. That's what I'll say.
Yes, exactly. I think I feel like personally you can sort of rule out drivers because their drivers are so strong, and because both of them are so strong as well. But yeah. I was just thinking back as well. Most disappointing driver of the day, I think, now I've thought about it, it's got to be Esteban Ocon. I think, I think we were expecting Alpine to do bits this race. And to be fair, we had Fernando in 8th, which is very good for a good result for Alpine. But I think Esteban Ocon starting in 11th and then ending up 14th, I think probably just unlucky for the guy. But, I don't think that necessarily reflects in any way his performance as a driver, but just a rough race, I think, and a bit of a shame, really.
Yeah, no, I'd say that's a fair nomination for most disappointing driver of the day.
Yes,
I agree.
Right, do you want to have a look at the driver standings, mate? Because this has taken it up quite a bit, I imagine, this race.
It has. We'll do the top 5 as it stands after France, and it's sort of shaken up quite a bit, actually. You won't be surprised to say, obviously, Verstappen is first.
Yes.
That's what we expected mathematically and sort of just from how the race went. But he's now actually made quite a substantial gap. Before the race, it was a 4-point gap to Hamilton in second, and now it's 12 points.
Yes.
Which is large. I mean, that's going to require quite a push from Hamilton. He's really going to have to find something. Obviously, we've still got a lot of the season to go, but it's certainly tricky for him to gain back on Verstappen after that. His morale is going to be affected. So Hamilton is second, Verstappen first. I'll let you read out the other 3.
Okay, yes. Okay, yes, I've got them up. So we've got, obviously, Sergio Perez in third. I think 84 points. Now, obviously, we're not super far into the season yet, so there's chance for, third, fourth, fifth, to catch up to where Lewis and Max Verstappen are. But, there's already a pretty considerable gap between first and second, and then, second, third, fourth, and fifth. I actually do think that the interesting sort of in terms of standings is going to be the battle for third between Sergio Perez and Lando Norris, because both have been driving super well this season. And you've got Sergio Perez at 84 points in third, and then Lando Norris in fourth at 76 points. So I think if we get a few more, strong races from Norris, I think that's going to be quite interesting to watch that. And then obviously fifth, Valtteri Bottas, you sort of expect Mercedes to be at least in the top five, but obviously I would say quite a disappointing result for Mercedes in terms of that. In terms of Bottas being there, realistically, you want him to be high. In an ideal world, Mercedes would love Lewis Hamilton number one, then Bottas second, but far enough away so that Lewis doesn't have any competition. But I think again, it's just all of these different aspects. It always is bringing back the conversation in everyone's minds. And I do feel really sorry for Bottas because I think the press has been absolutely ripping him apart. And it must be like, I think he must be in so much in his own head, and his confidence must be really knocked after this season. That it is so hard not to look at it and go, oh, like I think they're not going to keep him for much longer. And it is sad, but I'd love to keep him in F1. I think he's an amazing driver. And as I said earlier, I think keeping him around for the long term is just going to be better for him. But yeah, no, that's the top five.
Yeah, I mean, it's also interesting. One more thing is just to note that if you look at Bottas compared to Hamilton, so obviously Bottas is on 59, Hamilton on 119. So basically, Bottas is on half the amount of points that Hamilton currently has. If you compare that with Perez to Verstappen, Perez having 84, Verstappen 131. I mean, it's clear that Bottas is in comparison or in relative to the Red Bull teammate comparison, Bottas is not on the level that Perez is on compared to his teammate at the moment. So I think if that is to continue, if that sort of relative performance of the second drivers is to continue, then I really think that Red Bull are going to storm away with this Constructors' Championship.
That's the thing, isn't it? And talking about the Constructors' Championship, let's have a look at that, shall we? We've got, obviously, as expected, Red Bull. We have them first, 215 points. And then second, we have Mercedes at 178 points. And would you like to talk about that a little bit, mate?
It's certainly worth mentioning that obviously the gap is extended.
Yes,
and it's
extended.
Up to 37 points now, which I think is quite remarkable, really. That's
yes.
That, I mean, if you consider that the best that a team can gain in one race is 44 points with first and second and the fastest lap, that is a sizable amount of points that they're going to have. Mercedes is going to have to gain on top of Red Bull. If you consider that this weekend, Red Bull gained more points than Mercedes. Anyway, I think it's going to be really challenging for Mercedes to catch up, and I'm sure they're glad that they have so many races to do so. There's plenty of time, but it is going to be if Red Bull continue their performance, and I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. It's certainly going to be tricky for Mercedes to keep up.
That's the thing. Sorry, go ahead.
There is a sizable gap towards third, so they're not quite in sort of danger of falling into third.
No, but it's getting that first position, isn't it? And as you said earlier, that really does highlight how well Perez is doing compared to Bottas in that second seat at Mercedes.
It certainly does.
Yes, which is quite interesting. Then, obviously, third, we've got McLaren Mercedes with 110 points. Fourth, we've got Ferrari, which I'm quite surprised to see still in fourth at 94 points. I mean, to be fair, as you said, it's not that they're doing awful. It's just they're doing very inconsistent. So they're still picking up points, but not.
But they have lost sizable because before this race, McLaren were 2 points behind them on 92, and they're now on 110. So
it's
a big game from McLaren there. Nothing at all from Ferrari this weekend. They can't quite answer.
Yeah, and they can't really afford to have a weekend like that again. Really, they want to make sure that gap stays close to McLaren. I think it's been very disappointing for them. And then obviously fifth, AlphaTauri Honda. And I think 45 points from AlphaTauri is an absolutely amazing thing. As we're saying, Pierre in that car, he's just doing so well. He has no right doing as well as he is in that car. And the constructors' standings sort of reflect that for AlphaTauri with a fifth place spot, which is very, very nice.
Yeah, he really is knocking it out of the park. And it's still very close between them and now Aston Martin, has to be said. But at the moment, they're just about pulling away.
Yes. I think, Aston Martin certainly, first season back, they are, the fact they're doing better than Renault, better than Alfa Romeo, better than Williams, better than Haas, and not even better by like a few points. Like they've got 40 points. Like that is a really, really good result. And like the fact that they're sort of on the heels of AlphaTauri, I think it's great. It's really good, and I think this has been a very competitive season so far. So, we love to see it.
Yeah, we really do, man. It's not been this competitive for about 8 years. So certainly a relief.
Exciting again, man. It's getting exciting again. For sure. Right, moving on. Last segment of the podcast, mate. We got our highlight of the day. Now, we agreed on this before we started recording, and we decided to go with I guess it's sort of just Red Bull's performance as a whole, really, but specifically Max's overtake on Hamilton on lap 52 out of 53, and sort of the second pit strategy that got him there. I mean, I just think Red Bull's performance was just out of the park. Obviously Max had his bit of a mistake in lap 1, but he brought it back. The strategy was amazing from Red Bull, and just to get it's proper racing to have that overtake on the second last lap of the race, and then to be able to hold that, it's just amazing.
Yeah, agreed, man. I think the strategy was absolutely perfect by Red Bull. I think it really wouldn't have worked with any other driver. Verstappen really knew what he was doing out there. Once he got in those mediums, he was pushing every single lap. In some laps, he was getting a 2-second advantage over Hamilton, which was just incredible, really, with such a short amount of laps to cut down that time, to get it so close to the end of the race, but just about managed to do it. And the overtakes on both Mercedes cars were honestly clinical. They were clean, calculated, and he knew exactly what he was doing. And there was just no argument that he was on another level compared to Hamilton today, and certainly on Bottas. And, I think, the Red Bull strategy was highlighted very well by Perez when he overtook Bottas just to put icing on the cake for Red Bull. I think that's what really won them this race, but it was absolutely heart-clenching to see Verstappen go around the outside of, or up the inside, I suppose, of Hamilton on the penultimate lap.
It was remarkable. You never know if that overtake will stick, but it was just amazing. Really, really good. And Hamilton couldn't really do anything but let him pass, really. His tyres were so shredded by the end. I think Red Bull, amazing race, and hopefully we start to see more, great results for them in Austria as well next weekend. But yeah, that is Outside the Podium.
Episode 1.
Episode 1, there you go. Post-race, every Sunday, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be going over, the race, if there's been a race, and the times when there isn't a race, we'll be talking about the next race that's coming on. I've not explained that very well at all, but you'll understand when we do it. But yeah, man, it's been fun. It's been good.
It has been very, very good. I've enjoyed it. Certainly interested to talk about it with someone.
Exactly. And it's been a great race to try on. Yes.
Yeah, it certainly has, yeah.
Exactly. But no, Paul Ricard, it's been absolutely blown it away. Very surprising. And I'm very looking forward to Austria now. Hopefully we sort of see a return to form for Mercedes as well, sort of try and bring it back to Red Bull. But yeah, no, very exciting. All right. It's over, man.
Thank you for listening. And we'll see you again next week for Austria.
Yes, we'll see you next week at Austria. See you later.